Sure enough, I am starting to swim in cucumbers. So this last weekend on Saturday, out of nowhere at 11 p.m., me and my husband were sitting on the couch. I was like getting really tired at this point. My phone starts going off ballistically saying that we were under a tornado warning. And we had no idea it was supposed to storm at all. So we were both like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? So I immediately started thinking about hail, not so much a tornado, especially because I'm going to be harvesting these onions probably, I would say, in a 2 to 3 week time span. And I was really hoping that they would be okay. We ended up not getting anything, to go ahead and forward the story. But I started to freak out because there was actually quite a few things I didn't have like tied up further or staked up further and tied up. So I immediately came out the next day and got everything I needed to tied up, because that could have been really bad. You guys, so I was right. This is definitely a Goldie honey bear. Now that it's bloomed, I can officially say that. I love this plant. So this was one of my sunflowers that overwintered, and it's just been putting on a show. These leaves are completely massive. I did have to prune off some of the bottom. It was starting to get some rust on the leaves, but that's typically an issue I have in my sunflowers. I just prune off the leaves, no big deal. But this thing's going to be going absolutely crazy. There's a minimum of 20 blooms on this plant. There's what, 6 on the top alone. So this thing's going to be putting on a show, and I'm so excited. I'm gonna go through and trim up my yarrow a little bit. I've been letting it go mostly just for the bees and the birds. I used a lot of the yarrow last year to mess around with some tinctures, but I am gonna take a few bundles and hang them in my garage to dry a little bit. I think they would make really pretty dried bouquets. So that's what even just dried flowers to play around with. So they've just kind of been in my way. They've been kind of annoying. These ones look really pretty. There's a good chance I might get a second bloom out of this yarrow too. Man, this feels so much nicer. I can actually walk in. I'm not running into yarrow. I was having just yarrow spill over everywhere, and I really felt like the echinacea wasn't having its full potential moment to shine. So the other day, I was over here standing near the echinacea, and I saw this weird looking thing, and I was like, what is that? So I just sat here and stared at it and videoed it for a while. It looked like a hummingbird, but then it didn't look like a bird. It looked more like a moth, and I was like, what is this thing? So I went inside and I Googled hummingbird moth, not thinking anything would pop up, and there was a bunch of things that popped up. So it's the white-tailed sphinx lynx, something like that. I don't know. I'll put the name on the screen. Either way, this moth that looks and acts like a hummingbird is the moth where hornworms are from. Yeah, I've looked up this moth before, and there's so many pictures on Google that show the above view that I would have never thought that it acted like a hummingbird. It eats like a hummingbird. It flies like a hummingbird. It completely threw me off. I thought it was this morphed creature that just didn't exist. I posted it to my Instagram, and I had a bunch of messages being like, yeah, girl, that is where the hornworm's from. I've clearly had them in my garden before, and I've just never even noticed them because I've had hornworms in my garden before. But yeah, the more you know. This is my 6th year, and I just now visually saw what the moth looked like that creates the hornworm. Very interesting moth. Welcome to my chaos of a garage. The garlic is drying so well. We're on what? I think we're on week 3, or we're approaching week 3 at the moment. So they really don't have too much longer. They feel really good. I'll be taking them down really soon because I need this space for onions and potatoes in a few weeks. The garden is actually going to look, let me turn off this fan. The garden is going to look so bare in a few weeks because I'll be eliminating, what, 5 garden beds, I think. So I'm gonna just hang up a few more bunches of yarrow. You can see I have a few right here that are already dry. I want to get like an actual good bouquet to where it's just really pretty and big, and then I could hang it in a vase like once it's dry or something. So I have some pinks and some yellows. So I have a few that are more pinky and white. I think those are the ones. I think that's a really good little bunch. So let's hang that. All right, I feel like the day is just getting away from me. I don't know how, but it's 1:30 in the afternoon already, and there's a handful of things I need to get done in this kitchen. So I'm making pizza for dinner tonight, so I'm gonna start with making dough, and then I'm gonna go and make a chicken block treat for the chickens. And then I also am gonna go ahead and get another round of fermented pickles going. So I have 1 jar right here of fermented pickles going as we speak. And I'm gonna make a second. So this is the first year I'm actually playing around with fermented pickles. I have canned pickles, I think the last 2 to 3 years now. But my husband has, I would say, recently fell in love with fermented pickles because you also have that extra probiotic bonus. And I don't really like pickles, so I can't really taste the difference or I didn't taste it, but I can't really tell the difference. Obviously, I'm not going to try pickles, but a pickle you can is going to be a vinegar base, and then when you ferment is salt base. I do think fermenting is pretty straightforward. You don't need any type of equipment. As long as your salt to water ratio is where it needs to be, you're pretty much good to go. So yeah, I like fermentation just because it's equipment free, which is really nice. So I did do some fermented peppers last year, but I've never done cucumbers. Peppers were really easy. From what I've gathered, cucumbers can be a little bit trickier. Sometimes you'll randomly just have mold appear. So far so good though. We had bubbles this morning. It's looking cloudy. It's looking exactly how it's supposed to look. So hopefully I have some beginner's luck. All right, we got my big red bowl here, which I need to like pour stuff into. I am starting off with 1,200 grams of flour. I personally love going off of grams when it comes to any type of bread recipe. It's a lot more accurate. You get a lot more consistency out of your recipe. And it's just easier. You're not dealing with a ton of different measuring tools all the time. You just need your measuring scale. Perfect. I'm just using all-purpose flour. I do love to use bread flour, but I need to use that up. So I'm just gonna add the flour to the bowl, and then I'm gonna get some water. Water, I believe we need 750. Yep, 750. So 0 out, 750. You guys have been telling me you really want to just see more stuff in the kitchen, so I will gladly take you guys along because I always do a ton of baking and cooking throughout the week. Oh, see, I'm a little bit over. Perfect. All right, I'm gonna warm up this water for about 45 seconds. To the flour, I'm going to add 20 grams of salt. Whoops. All right. And then we are going to add 20 grams of yeast to this water. I'm gonna give this a good mix. We're just gonna pour that in together. Then I'm just gonna use the chopstick at first, and then I'm gonna go in with my hands and do a bunch of kneading. So I'm just transferring it all onto the counter here. This will give me a lot easier accessibility to be able to just knead it together. Ideally, you want to knead this for about 5 minutes. It's kind of sticking a little bit more. So I'm just going to lightly give it a little bit more flour. Okay, so this next step you can do a few different ways, but ideally, regardless, you want a bowl with a lid. So I have double the recipe here. I'm actually going to be breaking it up in fourths today because there are times I like to use a 9x13 dish, and I have 3 of these where I'm able to break them up really nicely and throw them in the fridge. Whenever I do a fridge way where I am making this dough earlier in the day and I put it in the fridge, I like to use my 9x13 dishes because they go into the fridge really easily. If I'm doing it just in the oven and I'm not throwing it in the fridge at all, I will typically just do my half on a huge baking sheet. This is a double baking sheet, I believe, but everyone has a 9x13 dish. So you're going to want to break up this dough into fours because half the recipe makes 2 of these 9x13 dishes. Are we 2 for 2 for my cats wanting my attention in the last 2 videos while I'm in the middle of cooking? They always know, I'm telling you. So what I'm gonna do is just grease up all of these bowls real fast with some oil. Throw a little bit at the bottom. Hopefully my little rant there made sense. I would just stick to a 9x13. You're gonna break this up into fours. The reasoning for breaking this up into fours and putting them all separate right now is because that way you can just flop it into your 9x13 dish and you're really not de-poofing it that much. I found that it just makes a little bit of a difference. For some reason, say you forget to split it, just split it before your second rise and let it sit just for a little bit longer. Okay, so what we're going to do is cut this in fours. See exactly how many grams it is the easier way to do this. It's typically always around like 2,000. It is 1,990. So we're gonna go for roughly 500 gram pieces here. 505. There we go. So there's 1. There's 2. There's 3. There is 4. All right, so now all I'm gonna do is mold them into their own little dough balls, and we are going to stick them in each of the bowls. I'm gonna plop it in, spread all that oil around, and then plop it back up. Nothing too fancy. This way too, say you don't want a big dinner, you can just cook one of these and have the next one the next day. You could also do it to where you're doing the 2 9x13s, but you do one with the white sauce, one with the red sauce. I've also done that before. This gives you a little bit more options, especially if not everyone likes the same toppings. Personally, I don't have any today, but my husband loves mushrooms and olives and I can't stand either one of them. So I typically do halvesies like this just so it's easier for us to split the pizza and then we both have leftovers, and there's who doesn't love leftover pizza, because I try to plan for leftover pizza. All right, so we're just gonna put the lids on and wait, this is the wrong size lid. Okay, so I'm gonna get all the lids on and then we're gonna let this sit out for about an hour, hour and a half. Pretty much just till it's doubled. Keep an eye on it. Okay, so chicken bok treat is really easy. All we're going to do, 3 cups of scratch grains, 1 cup of oats, half a cup to 1 cup of sunflower seeds, half a cup of wheat germ. Then I'm going to add half a cup of applesauce. I have a half cup of applesauce here, and you can also use half a cup of coconut oil for that. Then I'm going to add half a cup of molasses. I'm just going to measure it in this little cup here. That way I don't have to wash molasses off of anything, because Molasses is a sticky mess. Now I'm just gonna take 4 eggs and I'm going to whisk them together and add this. This is, I think, the reason why my short form video went viral this time. I've made this block treat so many times. I think I've filmed it 2 or 3 times now though. And every time everyone is just so disgusted with the fact that I'm using eggs and feeding eggs that my chickens laid back to them. But you learn when you keep chickens that that is a very normal thing for them and it's actually really good for them. These things can be pretty pricey if you like go to like a farm store or Tractor Supply, and I've never had to rebuy the wheat germ. I think I've made minimum 4 or 5 so far with that bag of wheat germ, and it's one of those things that just lasts you a really long time. So once you can tell that the egg and the molasses are all mixed in really well, what we're going to do is take our springform pan and we're going to add some parchment paper to it. I will say a springform pan makes it easier just with how much you're pressing and also the parchment paper. That way nothing gets stuck. I have had it stick. Had a handful of questions or comments actually of people saying that they made this and it kind of fell apart for them. So the next step is to actually press this thing together, and you want to literally press the hell out of this thing. You want to press with all of your body weight. So before we press, we are just going to get it evenly spread out a bit. This will move a little bit as you press. You will feel that. All right. And then just so our hands don't turn into a sticky mess, we are going to take another piece of parchment and we're going to get this all on the top here. All right. And again, you are going to want to press with all of your body weight for about 5 minutes. You want to make sure that there is no possible air that could still be in this block. You don't want to just lightly press it, you want to press it. Make sure you go back along the edge with your finger and really push those sides down. That is where you will see a lot of the flakiness happen if you don't press down that edging well enough. All right, so I am going to put a hole at the top of mine, so about 1.5 inches down. I'm gonna take a toothpick. I'm going to just make a circle over and over again, kind of like this. You can see how all of that seed pushed up. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our chopstick down in there, take our parchment paper, and we're going to press around, make the hole, press around, make the hole, press, press, press. And then just go around, double check that you're even everywhere, or it's even enough to your liking. Press those edges back down if need be. I will say before you do any of this, preheat your oven to 350. Did not mention that at the very beginning. All right. Just make sure it's all pressed. Now we are going to put in the oven at 350 for about 30 to 35 minutes. So went out to the garden, grabbed some dill, and I grabbed a head of garlic here. I'm gonna go ahead and get the dill and the cucumbers all cleaned up. So if you are big into fermenting, please let me know if I do anything that you think I should do differently. So one thing I have gathered from watching a handful of people is you can keep them whole or keep them sliced, but what the one thing you want to do is to remove like the base or the blossom. Apparently there's, I think, more of an enzyme in there that can apparently go bad a lot easier. I don't know if that's truth or myth, but that seems to be something that I saw across the board that many people mentioned. So, okay, so I'm doing everything by weight. Like I mentioned, I just feel like it's way more accurate when it comes to cooking. So I'm going to get the gram measurement of my cucumbers and my dill and the water, and then I'm gonna times that by 0.03. I believe that's a 3% salt ratio when it comes to fermenting. I believe that if you go a little bit higher with cucumbers, it's supposed to help. I'm gonna throw my dill in. I'm also going to go ahead and throw all of my garlic in. Let's see how many cucumbers we can fit. All right, the one thing I'm not going to add at this time is the chili flakes, because what I'm going to do is put this back on the scale. Then I'm going to add my water. All right, so there we have 1773 in grams. Let me times this real fast. All right, so we are going to do 54 grams. So what we're going to do here is we are just going to put a different jar on top of the scale. We are going to pour our water that is currently in this jar into that jar. All right, so zero all of that out, and then we are going to add 54 grams of salt. So take a toothpick, and we're gonna get this water really incorporated. We want that salt to dissolve. That way the brine mixture is completely the way it is supposed to be. See where that's at. At this time, I am going to add about a tablespoon of red chili flakes. The last time I did this, I added in the chili flakes before I added in the water, and it was an annoying mess. So that is what I learned from my first round of ferments. So now I'm just going to pour this water back into the jar. All right, now I'm just going to add my ferment weight. Beautiful. Any of these seeds that float to the top, though, I am going to go ahead and scoop those out. A lot of the chili flakes fell to the bottom, but sometimes these seeds will kind of float, and I don't really want that. I feel like that could cause a problem. I'm going to put a lid on very loosely, and I'm going to make sure to undo this lid twice a day to make sure I'm burping it. Voila, there's another batch of pickles. I think I'll probably let those two ferment. We'll see how things go, and whenever I get more pickles come through, I'll probably actually can the next batch. All right, so our block is done. It's just going to be cooling for the next hour or so. I will take it out of the spring form here in a little bit, but I'm gonna go ahead and get our dough going. So the dough has done rising its first rise, and now what I'm gonna do is transfer them all to 9x13 dishes. So you wanna take some olive oil and put it at the bottom of the pan. Spread out the oil a little bit with your fingers. And one little thing I personally like to do is sprinkle a little bit of salt at the base. Not a lot, but it just gives it just a little bit more flavor. All right, so all we're going to do is like slightly punch down the dough, and then we are going to pull it out and place directly on the base. Just do that with every single one here. See how this makes it a lot easier if you go ahead and just measure everything out. All right, boom. Kind of creates a little bit more dishes, but it does make for really good dough. Fun fact, my first job ever was Papa Murphy's. My sister worked there, and it was one of the funnest jobs ever. My best friend worked there with me in high school, and it was overall just so much fun. So what we're going to do now is just kind of spread out the dough at the base here. Obviously this will fill out as it rises, but I do like to go ahead and kind of dimple it with my fingers a little bit. Let me get you guys a little closer. Again, you're just going to slightly spread it out with your fingers and then kind of dimple it as you are spreading it out. Another reason I really like this pan is I can do that. It works really well for a little proofing area. I just have to cover the top there. Because I don't have another lid. I have 3 lids and technically 3 9x13s, but again, I can make that kind of 2. I had a few people ask me about this when I harvested my lettuce, and it's one of my favorite Pyrex dishes. I have it linked in my Amazon storefront if anyone's interested. All right, last one. So my husband is currently not home and I have other things I want to get done today before I start making pizza. So I'm actually going to stick all of this in the fridge right now. And then when he comes home or whenever I'm ready, I will pull out it from the fridge and it will rise for the next like hour, hour and a half. Again, till it kind of doubles in size. So let's go ahead and cover these 2 up. And then let's get a little bit of like foil for this. But I'm gonna have to reorganize this. Oh, not bad. Our stuff in the fridge. Beautiful. All right, so I'm not gonna bore you. We're letting this cool and I have a ton of dishes I need to put away and do. Excuse me. There you go. All right, let's see how many eggs we got for the day. Looks like everyone laid. Good job, girls. Yeah, good job. It's a volunteer loofah plant. Oh, you're fine. This is also something I definitely should upgrade. It's just an extendable chicken litter scoop and it works great. But ever since I extended their run area with this fence, it's just that much more to clean. So I would really like to get like one of the sifting shovels that I've seen, or I'll just take a shovel and I'll probably drill a bunch of holes through it. Just be easier to get a lot more and it wouldn't take me as long. So I go through every evening, typically before I put the girls in or right after I put the girls in for the night. And I just go through, do some scooping. Obviously it's good to keep it on the ground, but being in the small area I'm not trying to make anything really smelly or again, with a ton of flies, it's not worth it. I will gladly take the 5 extra minutes. Doesn't take me that much longer than it does to scoop my cat's poop. So I do have all sand here in this run and I love it. If I could put sand everywhere where these chickens take a crap, it'd be lovely. It's just as easy as sifting cat litter. There's nothing hard about it. looks like I need to water a few pots, but other than that, I don't have anything else to do out here tonight. I'm gonna take a shower after I water the few things and make pizza. I'm trying to get into better habit of watering in the morning, so I actually did some research on this, and apparently morning is better than evening because it gives the foliage a chance to dry out, and then that way you have less fungal problems. At least that's what I read, so it made sense to me. Khaleesi, come here, honey. Come here, baby. I've fallen in love with straw flowers. This is the first year I've had straw flowers in my yard as well. They're so cute. They look all pearly at first. Hello. Looky there. I have my first red paprika. We have a few cayennes already going, but that's my first paprika. I need to go pick basil from the garden. That is something I need to go do. Mission accomplished. This pizza recipe is honestly one of my go-to favorites, especially when we have cherry tomatoes. It's kind of a whatever you have in your house goes type of thing. Super cheap meal. A trick to cutting basil leaves is just to stack them one on top of another and then kind of roll them up. And then we're gonna dice. I'm gonna shred up some Parmesan, cheddar, and mozzarella. I need to go grab more garlic. All right, to help spread out the garlic a little bit more evenly, I'm gonna throw it into the sauce. All right, you want it nice and poofed. Then what we're going to do is sprinkle a little bit of olive oil over the top here. And then we're going to just dip our fingers in again, not much, but you do want to dimple it just a little bit. Then on there, we're gonna go ahead and add our sauce and add our toppings and whatever else we want. I did have to go run down and grab another jar of pickled hot peppers. I actually didn't grow bananas this year because I have so many pickled banana peppers that I think we are going to be content. You watch, I have a really crappy year next year and I wish I would have grown them or something. So doing the pizza this way kind of creates more of a pan pizza style. It's like at home Pizza Hut, but way better. All right, bake at 425 for 20 to 30 minutes. Good work today, ladies. Good job.